and welcome back to my channel True Crime and Trials, where I discuss true crime and trials. My name's Lindsay and I'm cracking on with the trial that is Bob Durst. So the next witness is James Harney, and he is a retired police officer for New York State, and in February of 1982 he became involved in the case of Kathy's disappearance, in which he had contact with Bob. Now, a lot of these police officers, detectives that are involved in this case, mind-blowing, especially when we get to Detective Michael Struck. I mean, that is a long testimony, but boy, oh boy. And the same with this one. It's just beggars belief. So, sorry, it just, wow. So, on that day, the 5th of February 1982, he had become aware that Gilberta had reported Kathy missing. In part of this investigation, James spoke to someone at Jacobi Hospital. He also spoke to Kathy's divorce lawyer and her family, and with Bob. So James is now reading an excerpt from his records that he took that day, and it reads, "On the 5th of February 1982, Dr. Leslie Hayne, we've heard from her before, Jacobi Hospital, stated that Mrs. Durst was treated for abrasions to the face, possible assault by Mr. Durst. She was treated and released. Incident occurred about 2 or 3 weeks ago. No police action taken on this." Next, he reads the report he took from family members. Jim McCormack, which is Kathy's brother, and Mary Hughes, Kathy's sister. Neither have heard from their sister and says that this is unusual. They are concerned. Jim says that the husband-wife relationship was deteriorating. So Bob called James's barracks and asked him to go out and meet him. James again reads his report, and it says, Robert Durst states that he dropped his wife off at Katona train station on the 31st of January to catch the 9:18 p.m. train to New York City. He states that he saw her get on the train and that he saw the train pull out. She had no luggage with her. He states that he talked to her at the Riverside Drive, New York City residence for about a minute at approximately 11:30 p.m. Mr. Durst was asked during the interview at this residence about his wife having been treated at Jacobi Hospital. He denied any knowledge of the incident. He was surprised that he did not contact the family physician. He was surprised that Kathy did not contact the family physician. During the well, she wouldn't do, would she? During the interview with Mr. Durst, he stated that neither he nor his wife had been at the South Salem house during the month of January. Well, we know he has. It is not used that often during winter. He says his wife is a boozer and will use coke. Got to get that digging, hasn't he? She has $5,000 in checking at Chemical Bank and a security account. She has very little on her and no major credit cards. She has her department store credit cards. Mr. Durst states that his wife went to her attorney during June 1980 for an agreement re-separation of property. He says it is a 25-page contract between the two. So James is asked what Bob's demeanour was like, and he says that Bob was unagitated, but then Bob's demeanour changed when he asked about Kathy being treated at the hospital. He says that Bob seemed more concerned that the police knew about this incident. On 7th of February 1982, James took a report from Doug Durst, and it reads that Doug had called a possible burglary at the Durst residence in South Salem. The rear window of the house was broken with a rock. No apparent entry to the residence. We know who did that. And James confirms that they didn't execute a warrant in 1982. Why? So the cross-examination. James says that Bob wasn't really a person of interest, but the only interest they had was that they wanted to interview him for more information about Kathy's whereabouts. So DeGuerin gets James to say that they didn't have enough for a search warrant at the time. And when Bob asked him to go to the house, they didn't really search it, they just made observations. And James even wrote that he saw nothing out of the ordinary and Bob didn't stop him from going anywhere in the house. Bob also answered every question he was asked, nor did he ask to speak to a lawyer. But did James ask to search the house? The defence are now trying to blame the agitation Bob had when James was asking him about the incident at the hospital on the fact that Bob had been interviewed by Detective Struck for several hours beforehand. James, he behaves like that all the time. I mean, I don't think being interviewed for hours changed his behaviour that much. James also interviewed someone who was good friends with Kathy called Michael Burns. He interviewed him on the phone, and Michael Burns told him that you don't know her as well as I do. Stop worrying about her. She's had enough. So James had also put this in report that Kathy had escaped with Michael Burns before. What? And then James had to do some investigations and he looked into whether Kathy had flown to Florida with Michael. But James says he isn't sure at that point that he was trying to determine if Kathy had travelled with him. His intention was to talk to Michael to see if he knew where Kathy was. I mean, we hear all these little revelations, but nothing more gets said. Nothing more gets said about this Michael Burns person, So we go back to what James says about Bob's demeanour when he spoke to him, and De Guerin establishes that you can't really say how someone should act in these situations because everyone acts differently. And James obviously didn't know Bob, so he didn't know how he reacts to things. Fair enough. And De Guerin is quite rightly asking James why he didn't take the opportunity to search Bob's home when he was invited there. I mean, why wouldn't you? A woman is missing. And the home she was in, last seen in, he's in and he doesn't... I tell you, the law enforcement in this investigation. James's answer is that they were just trying to determine the circumstances and wanted facts before they executed a search warrant. So redirect. So as for De Guerin saying that Bob didn't stop them searching the house, James didn't ask either. With regards to Michael Burns, James had no reason to believe that Kathy was with Michael, but did the check. James says again that Bob was more upset about James knowing about the hospital incident than he was about Kathy being missing. Opportunities missed, things not followed up. There we go. What more can I say on that one? I'll be back with more in another video, so until then, bye for now.